South Africa versus England live on TalkSport 2 with Sky Sports. Feel it all and watch every England Test, ODI and T20 live and exclusive on the dedicated Sky Sports cricket channel.
A very good morning to you. Welcome along to TalkSport 2. First ball of the morning should be going down any time now. Unfortunately, guess what? It's not happening. No, it's not deja vu. You didn't have too many last night and think you're still in some kind of dream. Unfortunately, this is happening all over again. We've had the information this morning that neither team travelled the hour or so out to Paarl as a result of positive tests for COVID in the team hotel. However, it was hotel members of staff who have tested positive, and as a result, the players, as I say, have not even left the hotel in Cape Town to make the journey to Paarl. Initially, the game had been delayed to an 11 a.m. UK start time for the first ball, and then about 20 minutes or so ago, we had the confirmation that today's game has indeed been abandoned. Now, we know no more than that at this point. We don't know where we stand with regard to the rest of the series. It is obviously early Sunday morning. I imagine there are a lot of very frantic phone calls and discussions going on at the moment to try and work all this out. As I say, though, unfortunately, it's all just too a little bit familiar.
The breaking news in the last couple of minutes: the first one-day international between England and South Africa in Cape Town has been postponed. A South Africa player has tested positive for COVID-19. The match, we hope, will be rescheduled for next week, but more info on this breaking news as we get it.
Further tests indicate that this is a more recent infection that occurred within the biosafe environment.
You can't really legislate for an idiot. You can't put yourself in a position where an idiot is going to cost you this whole thing. And that, for me, that worries me a little bit, that some mindless idiot could completely blow the whole thing out the water.
This is a shocker. Cricket South Africa have gone through some extraordinary changes, some real turmoil. This is the last thing that Cricket South Africa needs right now.
Cricket South Africa are in absolute disarray and have been for quite a long time. This couldn't come at a worse time for them. It was a huge decision for them to bring England out and try and get this series to go ahead.
There has been cases where there's been a false positive sometimes, so this might be a case where the directors of cricket or management would have said, let's not panic, let's just see if it is a false positive, let's have another test.
My maths is not exactly my strong point, but I'm guessing that he would have had to have been carrying this from the Thursday before, which means that he has been with and exposed to every member of that South Africa squad, plus some of the England players that he would have played against in the T20 internationals over the course of the weekend, and that if protocols are followed to the letter of the law, as I understand them from England's bio bubbles during the summer, that should be it.
So there you go. We might have set a record with this game in Paarl today, being the first game, or was that the second game? Or was it the last game? 3 games all in one. Well, that might not be the case. We can get back out and rejoin our South African correspondent, Neil Manthorpe. Manners, what news have you got for us?
First of all, Macca, I know you have a habit of standing up sometimes in the commentary box. Are you seated?
I am now.
Right. That's good, because you'd need to be for this news. The second and third games are going ahead at this stage. We've just had confirmation that the remaining 2 games will go ahead tomorrow at Newlands and Wednesday on Newlands. So the 3-match series becomes a 2-match series. Absolutely bewildered. I can't explain it from a medical point of view and perspective, but it would strongly suggest that today's abandonment was just for further clarification, and that there are no positive tests in the England team. They were all tested last night, and we were told that we were awaiting results, and if they were all negative, this game would go ahead. But we've been told that the remaining fixtures have not been affected. England will stay. They will play day-nighters on Monday and Wednesday at Newlands.
So we therefore must be assuming that there have been false positives and therefore retests have come back negative, and that has been enough to placate everyone and say, OK, we will continue.
Well, the 2 hotel staff who tested positive are clearly positive. They have the disease, they have the virus. They're not. There's been no mention at all of false positives, Macca. There's, apart from a bit of speculation here or there, but it was explained to me in great detail, too much detail for me to understand or appreciate, but it was explained to me by Shoaib Mandra, the Chief Medical Officer of Cricket South Africa, that if you doubt a positive, then you can ask for a more detailed test. It's actually a different test. The initial one is just positive or negative. If you get a positive that you doubt, you can ask for a second test, which is much more detailed and far more expensive, like 5 times the cost of the original test. And that then gives you a reading on a scale of 1 to 10, or how strong and how fresh the virus is in the positive reading. And on every single positive test, the second test was conducted in order to rule out the possibility of a false positive. That makes sense?
I think so. Right. You were saying that these 2 games now are going to be day-night games at Newlands. Now, initially, tomorrow's game had been pushed back an hour later. Are those start times remaining the same? Because I'll be honest with you, my initial reading was that when they put that game in tomorrow, probably the TV crew had asked for the game to be started an hour later, and therefore they probably needed more time to be able to get the kit from Pal and get everything set up for tomorrow. Do we know what the start times would be for these games?
Well, we don't. I mean, there's been no announcement of a different start time, but your instinct is based on your years of experience, Macca, because that is exactly the reason I had exactly the same thought, when Friday's game was abandoned. I'm thinking, okay, day game in Pal, start 10 o'clock, finish, D-rig. A D-rig takes 5 to 6 hours, a rig takes another 4 to 5 hours, so de-rigging is longer than rigging. So I worked it out, and I spoke to some of the cameramen and the TV crew, and I said, so if I've got this right, you haven't got any spare kit at Newlands. I reckon you're going to leave Boland Park around midnight and have to be at Newlands at about 6 a.m. So you've got to drive. So I reckon that gives you about 2 hours sleep between the D-rig and the rig. And he said, if we're lucky. So the extra hour was exactly that. The TV crews go through technical checks 3 hours before the start of play. But fortunately, we're only 30 miles away here in Boland Park, away from Newlands. But yeah, it was going to be a very, very long 36 hours for the TV crew.
Manners, I just want to bring in Harmy at this point, because Harmy has got a question for you.
Yeah, Manners, my mentioned the other day, and GCSEs didn't really go down well in the Harmison household. So I'm trying to work out, off the back of what you were saying before, the false positives, false negatives, and getting retested and stuff like that. If everything's gone according to plan and everybody is negative, I think the simple question is, why aren't they playing today?
Well, exactly. I wish I had a definitive answer, but I think there's so much, Harmy, that even the experts don't know. I mean, even now, 10 months after almost a year since 10 months since the virus first came into our consciousness, I still see experts saying there is so much we don't know about this virus and how it transmits. I mean, I was explaining earlier that the 2 hotel staff who tested positive, let me just explain, the green zone staff who live in the hotel, staying on site, have been there since the 16th of November. They work in small groups of 3. So in other words, the idea is if one of the staff contracted the virus, he could or she could only give it to 2 other members of staff. So the 3 waiters or waitresses or cleaning staff, or whatever they may be, work in one small section of the hotel, and they're confined to that section. You know, we talk about how hard it is for the players, and it is, and they're in it for a lot longer. But the point about the hotel staff is that they work only on a certain number of rooms or areas, or a certain part of the dining room or the restaurant. They don't, you know, so that they cannot, you contain it. Well, the devastating news for the hotel is that the creators of the biosecure environment is that the 2 positive tests did not come from the same group. In fact, they came from groups of 3 from different sides of the hotel. It's so hard to explain. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of medical experts who still say there's so much we don't know and can't explain about the virus and its transmission, and theories have changed. Harmy, why isn't the game going ahead today? I just think, you know, that the whole watchword for Cricket South Africa and for the ECB during the whole summer is that you do not take any risk. You know, you take as cautious approach as possible, and I just think that there must be an unknown or an uncertainty, and maybe one of these advanced tests results hasn't come back yet. But I can't explain it, and don't ask me why they've decided that Monday and Wednesday's games will go ahead. I mean, it's supposed to be, as I said, a World Cup Super League 3-game fixture. So, you know, if there's that much uncertainty to abandon the last 2 games, how are England saying, yeah, we're fine for Monday and Wednesday. Yeah, let's pencil them in. We'll be fine. 24 hours will make all the difference.
And just something else to pick up on, Manners, to explain to people at home, because I'm not 100% sure on if this has happened or it hasn't happened. I'm not making any sort of accusations at anybody, but during the summer in England, you literally had it started off as a 30-man squad going down to the Ageas Bowl, and then from there they went off to different other bubbles. But once you were out, you couldn't get back in. I think Joe Root was the only one, England captain, who could get back in after the birth of his second child, and he had to go through 5 or 6 days quarantine. Now, you look at the South African squad. Has the South African squad, because you've lost likes of Faf du Plessis and a couple others have gone out from the 2020 squad, have the whole squad been together? So the likes of, I think, Kiraj, Maharaj, John Smuts, others that have sort of didn't play involved in the 2020 but are involved in the 50 over, have they been in the bubble for the whole time as well, or did they get shipped in? And there's a potential that there could have been a breach then.
Harmy, good question, but the answer is that everybody has been in the bubble together. South Africa started off with a 24-man squad, you recall. Then the first positive test, they went down to 23. 2 more players were put into precautionary isolation because they'd been in close contact. So then they were down to 21. Then there was another positive test. Then they were down to 20. Then they released. They lost Kagita Rabada to injury. They were down to 19. They released 3 more players to go and play domestic cricket. So then they were where are we now? Down to 15, and that's the number that we're at the moment. 15 players, and so they've been shedding players out of the original group of 24, but none have been brought in. I mean, I think that was always obvious. They actually, after the first 3 players went into isolation, they announced that they were bringing in 2 players to help, just to make up the number so they could have 22 aside in those intra-squad matches that South Africa had planned. England, remember, went ahead with theirs and they were very successful. But they announced that they were bringing in 2 players to come and help with preparations, not actually joining the squad. But then they 24 hours later realised that should either of those players bring COVID with them, then that would kibosh the 10-day quarantine period. So they put them straight back on aeroplanes and sent them back to their provinces. That I can categorically state, Harmy, that no players have been brought into the squad and have entered the bubble since England arrived, since the 10-day preparation build-up period.
Manners, for the time being, thank you very much. I dare say we'll be back with you at some stage or other in the not too distant future. We are expecting some kind of statement from Cricket South Africa. Now, it would be very interesting to find out what the wording of that's going to be, because, of course, are they prepared to go through all of this again tomorrow morning? Because the reason I ask that is there's going to be broadcasters around the world expecting to fill 7 or 8 hours of their airtime with live cricket. And if all of a sudden it's going to get pulled at half an hour's notice, then people start to get a little bit antsy about the whole thing, and they start talking about not paying the fees for the rights, and things get a little bit fractious in those situations. So it'll be very interesting to see whether it is another holding situation, and we are indeed going to go through all of this again tomorrow morning. As it stands, what we are hearing is the plan, and you just heard it from Neil Manthorpe there, the plan is to play on Monday and Wednesday, 2 games at Newland, both day-night games. They were originally going to be a midday start tomorrow and an 11 a.m. UK time start on Wednesday. We are awaiting, the same as you, the confirmation of those details. As soon as we get them, then we will of course bring them to you. But the statement that we have has told us that today's game, the first game, what should have been the second game of this one-day international series, is not happening. Pal is not getting any cricket today after hotel staff at the hotel where both teams are staying have tested positive for COVID-19. So there is going to be no cricket today involving England and South Africa in Pal after all. We'll bring you more as we get it, of course, here on TalkSport 2.
South Africa versus England live on TalkSport 2 with Sky Sports. Feel it all and watch every England Test, ODI and T20 live and exclusive on the dedicated Sky Sports Cricket channel.